everyone. Nice to meet you. I hope you can hear me. This is amazing. So many people here today. So, as our beautiful host said, I am Tömörkènyi. I'm the founder of MT Performance. And I've always had a passion for the human body, for what it's capable for, what it's not capable of, and what we know and what we don't know. So my niche as a physical therapist pretty quickly became high-performing athletes. Because with high-performing athletes, I could push their limits more than I could with regular people. And that was nice. That was nice for me because I could pretty quickly make them faster, stronger, more capable, just in general better performers. So my athletes were pretty happy with me, and the clubs were happy, everyone were happy. But I still didn't make them healthier. I still didn't make them happier, more grounded to life. It was like there was a missing piece. And this made me think about my time as a physical trainer for regular people. Like I started out as a PT, as a personal trainer. And you know, all we did was diet plans, exercise plans. You know, it was very reductionistic within the personal trainer field and the medical field in general. It's very reductionistic what you learn. It's scratching the surface, you know. You need to be able to count your calories. You need to be able to count the macros, the proteins, the fat, the carbohydrates. And then you need to do an exercise plan. If you can do that, people are more active, people are losing weight, and everyone is happy, right? But again, for me, it was like there was a missing piece, but I couldn't open my school books and just say, what am I missing here? Because that was what I was taught, to make a diet plan, to make an exercise plan. So I had to forget everything that I knew. And for those of you who are already within the health industry, I guess you know what I'm talking about. We don't know enough about the human body and about holism. So I started opening books, listening to podcasts, even watching YouTube, because you could get a lot of information in there. And that was when I discovered something called fascia. So what the hell is fascia? Fascia is this little annoying piece of tissue that you find when you carve the Christmas turkey, or a chicken breast, or a tenderloin. This little dead tissue that you don't want to eat. It's not very delicious, but it's very nutritious, also within the human body. So frankly, we consider the fascia the same within the human body that we do when we kind of prepare the food that we do. We just want to cut it out and throw it out. But the fact is that fascia is much more than that, and we're only beginning now to understand. Because you have to consider fascia as this full body suit within your body. There's no beginning, there's no end. It's just one big Spider-Man suit that you can't get off your body, you cannot put it on. It's just there. And what do we know about like these superficial layers within the human body? They control everything else. So fascia is one of the most superficial layers within the human body. You will find out in a minute. And this also means that everything that's encapsulated within the fascia is controlled by the fascia. So fascia, the health of our fascia determines the health of our bodies in general. And a little side note to here, a very important side note, is the makeup of fascia. Because the main makeup of fascia is collagen and water. Fascia is made up of a lot of things, I know. But water and collagen is the main makeup. And what do we know about collagen? Collagen is a semiconductive protein. It means that it can move electrons throughout the body. It has bioelectric capabilities. And what do we know about electricity and water? You know, it conducts. So the combination of collagen and water creates a superconductive environment within the human body. So it seems to be that fascia is much more than a dead piece of tissue. Seems to be that fascia is much more than just a biomechanical thing. It seems to be the innate energy system of the human body. And water within the human body is not just water, because water that rests up against the biological surface charge separates. So it means it separates protons from electrons. And for those of you who don't know about this, this is called easy water. And when you separate protons from electrons, you get a battery. You get a net negative charge. So right now we can see that fascia seems to be the bioelectric makeup within the human body that may be responsible for communication, signaling beyond much more than what we know now. Because there much more, there should be an intricate system within the body that has to kind of drive this communication. And we don't know yet what it is, but it sure seems to be fascia. And what do we know about EC water? The way that we can form EC water is through sunlight. So we can actually charge our bodies. I don't know if you can see the diagram down to the right, but there you can see the peak in EC water generation is made by 3,000 nanometer lights. That's the infrared light, and that's the light that we can only get from the sun. So we don't want to go down that rabbit hole today. That's for another discussion. But just remember that fascia is made up of water that is charged by the sun. Okay? So fascia is the proof that our bodies connect to nature, and we cannot separate it that way. So myofascial restrictions are basically myofascial dehydrations. Because you know now that fascia is very watery. If you carve a piece of fascia within the human body, you will find that it's very gel-like. It's very slimy. It's kind of like snot because it is so watery. So myofascial restrictions within the human body occurs when the water can no longer access the fascial system. That's when it becomes dehydrated, as you can see here. Real pictures of hydrated fascia below and dehydrated fascia on the top. And this is important because of the different layers of fascia. Fascia is kind of, if you grab a piece of your forearm like this, what you will basically get is the layers of fascia that you see on the right. You will grab the epidermis and the dermis, which is the skin. Then you will grab the superficial adipose tissue, the fats. Just below that we have the superficial fascial layer. And below that we have some deeper fat layers and some deeper fascial layers. Just below that we have the muscle. Okay? So this is important to know because you cannot isolate fascia. Fascia is connected to muscle. And those of you who know about fascia may have heard about myofascia before. There's a difference. Myo means muscle, fascia means fascia. So when we talk about myofascia, we talk about the muscle-fascia connection. Because there is this intrinsic connection. And this is when the dehydration becomes important. Because when fluid is no longer able to access the fascia, this glide between the muscle and fascia becomes impaired. So if your body is determined by its function to glide between fascia and muscle, when it becomes dehydrated, you can see that we get a frozen shoulder, like we get low back pain. We cannot twist our bodies. This is the main cause of movement impairment, immobility. And I think that not many people agree with me, but that's the way it is. Fascia shows this to us. And you can see it here because of the fascia and the muscle connection. When water cannot enter, we become restricted. So when I was in school, again, I was taught about these reductionistic principles, that everything is isolated. We have a body of 600 muscles. And the problem with that philosophy is that when you think of a body with 600 muscles, you think of isolation. You think about you need to isolate this system. But it's not true. We are not a body of 600 muscles. We're a body of one sheet of fascia that connects 600 muscles. So if you shift the paradigm just a little bit, you start seeing that the body is holistic. It is connected. It's not isolated. But it's the way that we teach things today, just as with anything else. We teach that everything is separated. Everything is based on competition instead of cooperation. But fascia shows us that just within the human body, it's the same as everything else within the nature. And fascia is not just one sheet of tissue. It is one sheet of tissue, but it's connected into meridians. Some 50 years ago, a woman called Ida Rolf and a guy called Tom Myers, some years later, found through human dissections that fascia is organized into meridians. So they kind of dissected the human body and found that these fascial layers are kind of connected through different meridians, different multidimensional pathways within the human body. So this is kind of interesting because we know that the fascia has a bioelectrical makeup. We also now know that it's not just one connective system, it's kind of connected into pathways. What they later found out was even more interesting, because when they paired the studies they found on the myofascial meridians with the acupuncture meridians that the ancient Chinese found out thousands of years ago, they found an almost perfect connection between the two. Crazy coincidence, right? So what does this mean? It seems to mean that the acupuncture meridians are based on the myofascial meridians. And what do we know about acupuncture meridians? We know that we can manipulate these meridians in order for the cellular communication, the systems to work better. So it kind of makes sense now that fascia is made up of collagen and water to create this superconductive environment when we know about what acupuncture meridians are capable of. So I think that this will be mainstream in 10 years, that acupuncture points within the meridians works as small amplifiers, like in your own electrical system home in your home. You need to have amplifiers in order for the electrical system to run throughout your entire house. I think that's the way the body works. So that's why you can go to an acupuncturist and get needles within your arm or anywhere in your body to make the meridians work better. Because when we don't have the right flow, we need to restart the connection. And here you can see some pretty interesting real dissections of the human fascia where you can see these meridians. These are not AI generated, these are real pictures. So on the left, you can see the meridian of the superficial backline, starting at the forehead in a continuous path, ending down the plantar fascia in your foot. So there's a continuous connection throughout this path, partially responsible for force transmission, how the body moves, but also partially responsible for this cellular communication. So this shows us that you cannot treat the human body in local issues. So today the normal paradigm is that when we have back pain issues, we look at the low back, like you have pain here, so the issue must be here. Or we have migraines, so the issue must be here. But fascia shows us the exact opposite, that the issue is never local. And that's why when I treat people, I find out where is this spot on your body where you have issue, where is this connected to the meridian, because a calf issue doesn't have to be a calf issue, it can be connected to the entire line. The meridian to the right is even more interesting. That's what's called the deep front line. And the deep front line connects us from the tongue, from the fascial layer of the tongue, in again one continuous path all the way down to the foot. So it means that the function of your tongue and foot are intrinsically connected. So if you have foot problems, it can stem from the tongue and vice versa. It also shows us that the tongue is connected to the lung and diaphragm. And way before I knew this, I knew about breathing, that we have to maintain high tongue posture in order to stabilize our posture, improve the diaphragmatic function, to improve the lung function. And just years later, I found this meridian that shows that there is a myofascial connection between the tongue and the lungs and the diaphragm. So we cannot neglect these myofascial meridians. They connect to everything else. So when I made this presentation, I was just like, how can we neglect this principle of holism in the human body when we talk about it like everything else in the universe? We know that everything connects. We don't see any animals in nature isolate their bodies, or even when a car drives, it doesn't say, I want to use the left side of the engine today and the right wheel and the trunk. It doesn't work like that. You have to use the entire system for the organism to work. For some reason, the human body is the only thing that we have to isolate for it to work. And that's why we see people go to the gym today, isolate their muscles, do this mechanical stuff and think that they will be healthier. So I don't understand why we see people in the gym still today wearing shoes going onto the treadmill on a stable surface, even watching the television or scrolling meanwhile with AirPods radiating their brains under blue light. So we think that we can isolate from nature or we can detach from nature and still become healthy. And add to that these weird mechanical motions that we are doing that has no resemblance to real human movement. Because what am I doing here? Some pretty fluid rotational motion, right? How should this movement become better if everything I'm doing is this, right? Makes no sense. Like a squirrel doesn't become healthier if they lift weight. They just move in nature and find some nuts. That's kind of the same we need to do. So again, this guy to the right, barefoot on the ground, chopping some woods, doing some gardening. May he be healthier than the guys to the left? I think so, because you cannot detach from nature and still be healthy. So here you can see some MRI scans of unhealthy fascia, because we need to get into fascial dehydration, what it does, how we can track it, and what we can do about it. So on the left, you see a fascial dysfunction. On the right, you see remodeled fascia after 90 days of myofascial releasing. And what you see is these adhesions, these dehydrations, that's creating this small little inflammatory state. When we remodel it over time, it disappears. And again, we can move our bodies better. To the right, there is an illustration of this, how it looks like within the body. Because again, if you think about these myofascial layers, what happens with a dehydration and a restriction is that we create a sustained muscle contraction. So kind of this inflammatory state within the myofascia that is pushing to all these layers. And they are compressing these layers. And this is an issue because within these myofascial layers, we have small little blood capillaries. We have small little lymph vessels. The blood capillaries is supplying the area with blood. That is supplying the area with oxygen. The lymph vessels are what supplies the area with water. So when we have myofascial restrictions and we compress these areas, we lose oxygen and we lose water. So we create an energy depletion within the system. And this is why many of you today may sit down here and feel, I have some sore spots on my body, persistent pains. So trigger points occurs through physical trauma. This can be injury, inflammation, even scarring. This can be overtraining. Because again, like I showed you before, fascia is a connective system, so it needs to distribute load throughout the system. But we think today that we can take 100% of the load and put down to one muscle and believe that fascia respects that. But we know that fascia is interconnective, so this load must be distributed throughout the entire system. If we don't do that, we create these small adhesions and restrictions that becomes trigger points. It can also be emotional trauma, because we know that the body responds to our emotional states. Like, for example, depressed people will inherently be like this, protect their vulnerable organs. Over time, this creates muscle contractions that stores the trauma. And that's why you may have experienced it before. I have definitely seen quite a few clients that when we release these myofascial restrictions, they break out into tears because the trauma emotionally has been stored within the fascia. And there can be many reasons for that. So how do we locate these trigger points? Like I just told you before, persistent pain, like almost all the time. We have these painful, annoying spots on the body that doesn't disappear. It's not like muscle soreness that goes away after a few days. It's painful spots that stays there. So this is 90% of the time. Sometimes we have some silent trigger points that we cannot feel, but most of the time it's these annoying spots. Some of you can feel them if you press on certain spots of your body. You can feel, I'm fucking sore here. Some of you may even feel them as movement impairments. This is the worst part, where you cannot extend your leg, or you cannot rotate your torso, etc., like we just talked about, because you have these restrictions. So again, the way that we can often see them is through posture, because they act as compression. And that's why I'm so focused on posture, because an aligned posture shows us that we may have very little myofascial restrictions. And The way we know this is because fascia works as tensegrity. This is a principle within the human body. When we build structures in nature, we work under the laws of compression. Like we build and we stabilize, okay? And I was taught that the human skeleton was just like that. That when we are born with a skeleton that is just fixed. That's the way it is. But it's not, because fascia works under the laws of tensegrity, tension and integrity, meaning that your bones are merely floating within your fascia. And when your bones are floating within your fascia, what does that mean? It means that they are determined by the health of your fascia. So again, imagine this Spider-Man suit. If you have compressions within this Spider-Man suit, you can see how it reorganizes the bones. And that's why I brought this tensegrity model today, because in a balanced tensegrity model here, if you imagine the sticks as being the bones, the strings as being the fascia, then in a perfect, balanced tensegrity system, everything is aligned, everything can move in coordination. But if we have restrictions within the fascia, then you can see how it doesn't just reorganize locally, but it reorganizes the entire system. So that's why I'm always using posture to assess trigger points as well, because we cannot always feel it on our bodies, but we can definitely see it. You know, the office posture, there's a reason a lot of people have this kyphotic back. That's because we are locked into this position. And that's because of the tensegrity nature of fascia. So here's just a few case examples where you can see how we can remodel the fascia. Oh, goes a little bit too quick. You can see how we can remodel the fascia. You can see how this tight Spider-Man suit is kind of decompressing so the bones can operate better. So we allow for better movement within this suit. This is a scoliosis case. Believe it or not, this is only five sessions in 20-something days, where you can see the S-shaped scoliosis spine is being fully resolved in a matter of a few hours. Okay? And this is possible because of the principle that I just told you about, that fascia can be remodeled, right? So just as it can be restricted and wreck our bodies, it can be remodeled again, so our posture, our skeleton realigns. And again, here you can see it once again, the same principle that I'm talking about. So I'm using two different variations in order to treat these myofascial restrictions. One is decompression, two is compression. The end goal is still the same. The end goal will always be decompression, because you want to decompress the fascial layers. But with number one, decompression, you can see the MRI to the left of a cupping applicants on the fascia. So you can see when you apply this cupping and you decompress the myofascial layers, you can see that you create more space within the fascia. So that's actually what we want to do, because when we decompress the fascial layers, we allow for better blood flow and lymph flow that I just told you about before. The second one is by applying pressure. And that's why I brought this little gimmick, because it illustrates perfectly what this is about. Because if you imagine this little swimming pool, this is the human body that is almost pure water. If you have restricted fascia, then you have this kind of dry sponge that is resting within the swimming pool. But it cannot attract the water. It's only when we begin remodeling, applying pressure to the fascia, that's what a massage is, that over time, we're attracting water back into the fascia, so it becomes dehydrated and can move better. So these are the two ways in which we can remodel the fascia in order to become better movers again, realign the postures and rehydrate the fascia, which it's all about. So again, this all comes back to our problems today, right? For some reason we live longer, I have no idea why, but we do. Maybe it's because of the medical system that can do some magic. But we live longer, but we definitely live with less well-being. And a lot of the reason is fascia. That fascia is compressing us. And remember that fascia connects the entire body. So when fascia is fucked up, everything else will be fucked up. So that's what we need to learn. Exercise 7 times a week in a diet plan is not health. Health is connecting back to nature, moving more, being more aligned with nature. We don't need a diet plan. We don't need to count calories. We need to intake quality foods. We need sunlight. We need movement. We doesn't need exercise. So hopefully today this gave you a little bit of understanding about fascia and how important it is, and why I think fascia is root cause medicine and will be in the future. So thank you for listening, and have a continuous great Copenhagen Health Week. You take these on?
Yeah, so thank you, Matt. I must say, what a brilliant way to explain the body and fascia. Don't you agree? There's so much logic to it. And I just wanted to, because I also know that if you want to know more about movements, there's also Human Garage. You can go in on YouTube. But if you would recommend sort of a good movement to release stress in your fascia, what would that be that the audience can take with them?
A good movement?
Yeah, because there are some movements where you can...
But that's already pretty reductionistic, right? That we have to say one good movement.
No, but I mean...
Yeah, but I would say movements.
Yeah,
again, we didn't have time to cover it, but movement in general. Like if you think about our ancestors, they walked, they ran, they hunted. Everything happening within these multidimensional planes. So that's why we have to think about movement. Take a walk in nature, do some gardening. It's much better than overstressing our bodies 7 times a week. So that's my long answer to a short question.
Well, Mads, thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome.
Please give it up for Mads.